There's just no excuse. Kansas State must start the 2025 season 4-0.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Let's dive into an interesting topic, an interesting discussion, as always, here on Locked On Kansas State. You know, with the non-conference schedule slate featuring a rebuilding Army team, a sinking Arizona program, and an FCS team with portal patchwork, and that's even it being an FCS school, the Kansas State Wildcats have a golden runaway opportunity towards the Big 12 title race and to start undefeated if they can get past Iowa State in Dublin on week 0. So why doesn't anyone want to say it out loud? I will. They can finish, and they should finish, start the season 4-0. On today's show, Kansas State's path to a 4-0 start. Why this start, in my opinion, is non-negotiable. Army searching for a new identity. Arizona's chaos equals a perfect setup in that FCS opener, as we mentioned, after Dublin. North Dakota's holes should give Kansas State a free warm-up game after that game in Ireland. So is it fair to say that Kansas State must start 4-0, or are we underestimating someone on the schedule? Drop your take below. And while you're there, hit subscribe. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on the channel on Locked On Kansas State before July 4th. So if you haven't already, join the adventure. Look, North Dakota, before we get into North Dakota, let's just quickly talk about Iowa State. And I'm not going to get in too deep because we have Farmageddon Fridays on the show. We talk about Iowa State. We're going to talk very in deep about week 0 all the way up into that first game. You know my thoughts right now on Iowa State. It is a coin flip. That still does not change that it is a non-negotiable fact that Kansas State needs to go 4-0. Do I think there's a possibility of 3-1? Yes, I do. Let's get that clear. Let's get that out here on this show. But it is not an excuse. They have to start 4-0 if they want to find themselves in the Big 12 championship, if they want to find themselves in the college ball playoffs, if they want to prove that Avery Johnson is not only just a dark horse Heisman candidate, they want to prove that they belong at the table. There. We'll dig more into Iowa State in the future. I want to talk about these non-conferences. I want to talk about these 3 teams. Let's talk about North Dakota first, that FCS opponent. Now, after Dublin, there has been a historical trend that teams that go from Dublin to an FCS opener do not perform well. We've seen it with Nebraska. We've seen it with Northwestern. We've seen it with other teams. They don't lose, but they don't perform well. Kansas State couldn't have picked a softer opener after Dublin if they tried, in my opinion. Now, North Dakota, this is nothing against you, but obviously Kansas State is in a much higher level than what North Dakota is. North Dakota opens the season in Manhattan. This will be their first game. And let's be honest, they are also rebuilding. They're portal patching. This is an FCS school that's trying to bring in FCS speed into a Power 4 stadium. This game isn't about winning. It's about setting a tone for Kansas State. It's not just about winning, I should say. They have to set a tone. If that tone, especially if that tone was not set in Dublin, there is a clear way for you to set the tone in Dublin, and there's also a clear way for you not to and still come out with the win. That game could get ugly. Farmageddon could get ugly. We've seen Farmageddon get ugly before. Against North Dakota, back in Manhattan for the first game of the season, that game must set a tone. There's not much to talk about North Dakota because there's not a lot of content out there. They had their spring game. It featured no live stats and non-traditional scoring. So, I mean, there you go. There wasn't really any game reps. Lack of sharp game reps, if you will. But according to some of the talking points that I've seen online, defense dominated their own offense during spring. Yikes. 32-17 was the final score for the defense. They had 2 interceptions and limited explosive plays. Are you worried? You shouldn't be. Running back Xavier Lee of Sacred Heart, he was a Sacred Heart transfer, is their most productive back. 517 yards last season for Sacred Heart. He'll be with North Dakota. Their secondary depth is razor thin after graduation and transfers. It sounds like a perfect spot, again, if they haven't already against Iowa State, to let loose Avery Johnson, to let him ride, to stat build, to prove to the country that he is a Heisman Trophy candidate, to show that, hey, these 6'4", 6'5" receivers on this team, they're a real deal. Get to do that in Manhattan this season in front of their home, against the hometown in their own stadium. Love it. Starting corner may be JUCO transfer Enrique Carmichael or an FCS retread. To me, I mean, this is a warm-up game. Plain and simple. You get in, you get out, you stay healthy. That's the main goals of this one. If Kansas State doesn't win this game by 30 or more points, like that might be the red flag. That might be the red flag, is that you don't win by 30. Now, as I mentioned, you have the opportunity to possibly start slow because you're coming off Dublin, especially if you're riding high after beating the Cyclones, a team that you did not beat last season, a team that did go to the Big 12 championship last year. They lost, but they went. There's a lot of things riding on week 0 to make sure you can ride high in these other 3 non-conference games. I understand that, but there should be no reason why you can't go 4-0. No reason whatsoever. North Dakota is bringing a D2 level run game to Manhattan. Expect fireworks early. I mean, really, Avery Johnson should be going off here. Whatever didn't work, whatever adjustments that need to happen from the Dublin game are going to be fixed. And North Dakota might be the puppet, especially with probably play action. I'd assume play action, if it's not already perfected by Dublin, will be perfected in Manhattan against North Dakota. It's a tough spot to be in if you're the Fighting Hawks, right? And the crazy thing about it is we don't know what's going on with their quarterback. There's a lot of questions about their quarterback. The starting quarterback from last year didn't play in the spring game because he's still recovering from an injury. They did bring in a couple transfers. I believe one was from San Diego State, if I remember correctly. They don't have an answer. That could be a reason why the defense did really good against them in the spring game. But are you worried? I'm not. I'm not worried about North Dakota in this one. On this show right here, we are assuming they beat and take care of Iowa State. So after North Dakota, they should easily be 2-0. Easily be 2-0. It should not be a problem whatsoever. Next, Army isn't just replacing a quarterback. They're replacing their entire identity. And that is something we don't say very often about a service academy. Why? That doesn't worry me. And actually, it makes me feel very good about that game. Next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every moment delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's in-game winning shots or a breakout player that has been better, and it's just a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with the NBA Finals coming up. There is no better time to get involved with FanDuel. Performance trends, player props, same-game parlays. FanDuel has it all. The interface is incredible. I love using FanDuel when I need to check with sports betting. You name it, it is the absolute best. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I mean, SGA, that is the guy that you have to pay attention to. Whatever his points are from FanDuel, just assume to take the over. I mean, that's what I'm doing. At least game 1 of the NBA Finals. That's what I'm doing because I'm riding with that. And I don't know if I'm going to play a single game parlay. I don't know if I'll go with the SGP, but I'm definitely riding with FGA. If you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get a $200 winning thing in bonus bets. Gotta love that. Bonus bets are always an awesome thing. Make every moment count with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. For the first time in a decade, Army's offense is a complete unknown, and against a Kansas State front seven that's faster and more physical than anything they've seen, that they will see all year, it's going to be a problem for that team. It's going to be a problem for them. Absolutely. I love where Kansas State is at right now in the trenches with their pass rush, with their linebacking core. And that's where this is really going to shine for the Wildcats against Army. Look, you could probably say the biggest weakness of Kansas State is in the trenches. Offensive line and defensive line might be the biggest question marks this year. And I'm not worried about it. If that is the weakness this season, I think we're just fine. If you don't have to worry about it being a liability in the secondary or subpar wide receiver room as what we had last year, but you just have some issues maybe up front, maybe not getting to the quarterback as much, which I don't think will be a problem. Maybe the run game will have some issue, which is where Army possibly could show a little bit of pizzazz, right? But I don't think that's going to be the problem. They lost quarterback Bryson Daly, the engine of the offense last year. He was at one point seen as a Heisman candidate. Yes, an Army quarterback was seen as a Heisman candidate last year, had over 1,000 rushing yards. It's gone. He's gone. He's not there anymore. They have no returning quarterback with more than 30 live reps on the roster. So when you talk about Army's offense, the quarterback is the engine. Dare I say more than Avery Johnson is to Kansas State's offense. You have to be a mobile, a dual threat kind of quarterback, more run heavy than anything as the Army's quarterback. And maybe that's not the case this year, but even if it's not, there's going to be some growing pains because they're switching away from the triple option elements as well. They're trying a modern spread under this new offensive coordinator of Drew Thatcher. Who knows if that works? And if it doesn't work, either way, this is only going to be their second game of the season. There's going to be some growing pains. And you got to try and find a way to adjust against a Kansas State defense. No way. Did you see the players we brought in the transfer portal? Gabe Powers. I'll just name, that's just one player I think is going to be really good. Austin Romaine, awesome. That linebacking core I think is going to have a huge day against Army, and we're going to continue to talk about that throughout on this show. We got a lot to dig into. We've hardly touched the defense on this show this offseason, and that's going to change in the month of June. Look, they only have 2 starters returning on the offensive line, and their defense last year was ranked 115th in tackles for loss allowed. So you shouldn't be worried. This should be a 3-0. If they try to out-athlete Kansas State, it's going to get ugly fast. Now, it's Army, and Army plays hard. Every service academy plays hard. This is an Army team that was at one point seen as a potential G5 candidate for the college football playoffs. Like, they were right there until the end of the season. Would have been really cool to see a service academy in the first year of the playoffs. It didn't happen, though. Army and Navy were both there. But one thing I've always heard from players when I've covered with Kansas State, I've covered at other college football programs throughout my writing and podcasting career, whenever they play Army or they play Air Force or Navy, one of those service academies, they might win, and they might win by 30. But they always say that, man, that was a tough game. That was one of the toughest games, most physical games I've ever played. So that's one thing that you might have to worry about in this one. One, against North Dakota, you got to make sure you stay healthy because the next week you got Army. And you're most likely going to have some bumps and bruises, and you got to make sure those are taken care of before you get the Big 12 play. That is probably the biggest number one issue that I am worried about in this entire non-conference schedule. And many people asked it on a poll, a YouTube community poll, what non-conference game are you most excited for? 86% of you. And a lot of you voted. Thank you very much. If you see those on YouTube community, vote. It actually helps the channel get out to more places as well. It's a cool way to help spread the channel, and you get to let your voice be heard. So I really appreciate that. But 86% of you said Army. Now, is it just because they're a service academy, or what is it? Because to me, although it would be really cool to watch Army play, if I'm Kansas State, I'm a little worried about being banged up for the next couple weeks afterwards. And in just a few weeks, you got a team like Baylor, who I've been on record saying it could be the scariest team on the schedule. This is why it's important to start 4-0. Even if you get banged up against Army, you can still find a way to be super strong. Army is in the middle of a scheme crisis. You know, that game in Manhattan might be a wake-up call. Who knows? Kansas State could hold Army under 10 points if that quarterback transition is still rocky. Kansas State just has to get this game accomplished. They have to move to 3-0, and they have to take care of business in Manhattan for the second week in a row. It just has to happen. And Army might be the toughest game on the non-conference schedule. And I even say that with a Big 12 opponent being as a technicality in the non-conference. We'll do that next as we wrap up this episode right here on Locked On Kansas State. And thank you so much for watching and listening to Locked On Kansas State. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. As I mentioned, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the 4th of July. It'd be a really cool milestone to hit for the channel. So let's try and do that. So if you haven't already, hit that button. We're talking the non-conference schedule and why I think it's a non-negotiable for Kansas State to be 4-0 once that non-conference is done. And yes, it does include beating Iowa State in Dublin on week 0. It has to happen, non-negotiable. If you want to find a way in the Big 12 championship, if you want to find yourself in college football playoffs, there is a possibility you can still make that happen if not going 4-0. I'm not saying it's impossible, but obviously the path is a lot easier. We saw what the path looked like last year at 7-1, right? Until the wheels fell off against Houston. Everyone was talking about Kansas State being a Big 12 contender, a possibility being in the college football playoffs. That was a good feeling you're at. Imagine if you finish your first 4 games of the season and you don't have a single tally in that loss column. It'll feel just as good, especially the way that schedule is lined up in Big 12 play. Arizona is a Big 12 opponent, yes, but this game was scheduled before they became a Big 12 team. This is when they're still at the Pac-12, so this is a non-conference game. And it'll be the last time they play a non-conference game like this. Any other time they play, it will be a part of the Big 12 play. And Arizona had the worst year last year. It was a night and day for Arizona and Arizona State. Arizona State was predicted to finish last in the Big 12, and they won the whole thing. Arizona was predicted to finish towards the top, and it really didn't work out for them. They had so much talent on that team, and it was just super underperformed. They had a first-round NFL draft pick in Tet McMillan, and their quarterback, Noah Fafita, just couldn't get it done. And who knows if he remains the quarterback by the time he gets to Kansas State. There's some other quarterbacks on the roster that potentially could battle him for the job. They have no identity. Their new coach, Brent Brennan, has been already on the hot seat, a dangerous mix when Kansas State rolls to town in a night game that's going to be a primetime window for the Big 12. The reason they brought these teams from the West Coast to the Big 12, a Friday night game in Arizona, in Tucson. And although it's a non-con game, Kansas State's first road test as well. Arizona, they've got, as I mentioned, second-year head coach Brent Brennan, an unsettling quarterback room, and a whole lot of pressure to prove they belong in this new-looking Big 12. I think UCF and Arizona still haven't proved themselves. You got a new coach in UCF. You didn't get that many changes in Arizona. I think people were calling for it, but you didn't get it. Brent Brennan took over for Jed Fish after he went to Washington, and it just didn't work out so far. He was known for his steady development at San Jose State. That you haven't seen that so far. Now, I will give him this caveat. Last year, if you paid attention to Big 12 football, the Noah Fafita, the Tet McMillan issues were obviously one thing. Arizona had a ton of injuries on their defense. There might not have been a single team in college football last year that had more injuries on their defense than Arizona. But you can't fix that moving forward because some of those left, like, for example, Gunnar Maldonado is with Kansas State now. And he's just one of the many that left in the transfer portal. They did get Trey Spivey from us, though. So Trey Spivey could be in this game. Potentially a revenge game for him. I don't know. Would you consider it a revenge game? We wanted to keep him. Didn't we? At least I know us did as fans. If Noah Fafita continues this inconsistent play, there could be some other players that step up, and we'll see if they step to be the quarterback. Who knows? There's a lot of things. Tet McMillan, obviously, in the NFL. Now, multiple offensive linemen graduated and transferred. Defensive unit was 98th in pass defense last year, and I think they're super thin at linebacker. I am going out on a prediction here that Arizona will finish in the bottom 2 of the Big 12 this year, potentially at the bottom. And although this is a non-conference game, they will not get a win from Kansas State. This game was scheduled before Arizona joined the Big 12. Now it counts as a key Big 12 measuring stick, though. We get these two early games before everybody else starts their Big 12 play with Iowa State in week 0, which counts, and Arizona, which doesn't count on the Big 12 record, but obviously still counts in the win column getting to the college football playoffs. Huge college football playoff implications for K-State's strength of schedule and national narrative. That's for sure. You can't obviously change the fact that you have Arizona on your schedule and they're not good. You can't help that. But if you're impressive, if you're super impressive against Iowa State, and you roll North Dakota, you roll Army, and you roll a Big 12 opponent in your non-conference schedule, Arizona, you take care of them and go to 4-0, they're not going to be able to overlook you. They're not. That non-conference schedule might sound soft, but you have a Power 4 opponent in there. You have Army in there. And then, sure, an FCS team. If you look at some of the SEC non-conferences, Kansas State doesn't look soft. But every single one of those games are absolutely winnable. So make no mistake, Arizona will be fired up for this one. It'll be in Tucson. But Kansas State's deeper. They're more experienced, more physical. This isn't just a chance to go to 4-0. It's a chance to show the country that you don't blink even on the road, even at late at night. You just don't make it happen. Kansas State will go 4-0 to start this season. Book it. Bookmark it. Record the little clip. Put it on Twitter X when it happens. Because I was going to say, even when it doesn't happen, you can show it to me. But I just don't think that's going to be the case. Absolutely not. Let me know your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Do you think Kansas State starts the season 4-0? And if so, where do you think they go the rest of the way? Is this team good enough to win 10 wins this year? Can they get to double digits? Does that narrative change if they lose one of these games? What if they lose one of these games that's not Iowa State? What if they fall to Army or Arizona? Is the season over then? Is college football playoff hopes over by then? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. I appreciate you listening and making Locked On Kansas State your first listen. For your second listen of the day, check out the portal with Brian Smith. He's got you covered, everything you need for recruiting, transfer portal, you name it. Got some official visits coming in from Kansas State. We're going to get Brian Smith back on the show as well, like we did last week, to talk about those in the coming days. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.